quite a bit thinner, but you look fit.
I had fantasies about picking up a hitchhiker.
I don't know how to express the regret.
Looks like a bunch of satisfied people sitting around here.
I was 12 years old when I told my parents, when Larry rubbed my feet, he uses his penis.
Your feeling was to kill him, so he will never hurt anybody again.
Father, have a chance to say something.
Go ahead, sir.
You son.
In a courtroom, we don't use profanity, but if you have some words that you would like to say, I would like to give you the opportunity to say them.
I would ask you to, as part of this sentencing, to grant me 5 minutes in a locked room with this demon.
I have
Would
a
you
feeling.
do that?
That is not how
Yes or
our.
no?
No, sir, I can't.
Would you
do
give me
that.
1 minute?
You know that I can't do that. That's not how our legal system.
Well, I'm gonna have to take
Press Morgan. I'll
Stay
man, get over here, Matthew. Hurry up.
I want that stuff.
Behind your back.
Give me 1 minute with that. What if this happened to you guys?
Not behave like that. No one can behave like this. I want to make sure it's crystal clear.
You haven't lived through it, lady.
You cannot be.
The Larry Nassar case is one of the most shocking and significant scandals in sports history, highlighting systemic abuse and the failures of institutions to protect vulnerable individuals. A former physician for USA Gymnastics and Michigan State University, Nassar and the impact of the case on victims, institutions, and society at large.
Lena, I find myself on familiar, yet disturbing unfamiliar territory today as we appear here in your court. I will do my very best to remain ethical, politically correct as I address this court, the defendant, his counsel, in this extremely emotionally charged issue. May I address the defendant?
Larry Nassar was born in 1963 and grew up in a small town in Michigan. He developed an interest in medicine, ultimately earning a degree in osteopathic medicine. Nassar gained prominence as a sports physician, becoming the team doctor for USA Gymnastics, where he worked with elite athletes, including Olympians. His position granted him access to young gymnasts, a role that he exploited. Throughout his career, Nassar built a reputation for being knowledgeable and caring, which helped him gain the trust of both athletes and their families. However, behind this facade, he was engaging in a pattern of sexual abuse that spanned over 2 decades. Many of his victims were minors, and he often used his medical expertise to justify inappropriate behavior.
Inmate Nasser. Inmate Nasser. That is what your name is. And don't you forget that. The media outlets that have so intently covered this hearing need to know your name.
As allegations began to surface, the extent of Nassar's abuse and the systemic failures of institutions, like USA Gymnastics and Michigan State University, came to light. This would lead to a legal reckoning that would change the landscape of sports and child protection forever.
Your name is not Dr. Nasser. It is not Mr. Nasser. It is not Larry. It's inmate. Inmate 21504-040 for your eternal life. As a law enforcement psychopathic agenda.
The first public allegations against Larry Nassar surfaced in 2016, when former gymnast Rachel Den Hollander came forward with her story of abuse. Her brave testimony encouraged other victims to speak out, leading to a flood of accusations. In total, more than 300 women and girls accused Nassar of sexual abuse, many detailing similar experiences of manipulation and exploitation.
Thursday of last week, I saw my doctor for a follow-up on sleep medication to help me with my nightmares. She told me about the trial and that her own daughters were testifying. I had never read any articles, watched any videos, or asked any questions before that. I did not want to know anything. I was in denial. But when I got home from that appointment, I got on my laptop and watched all 3 days of the trial so far. I stayed up for hours and sat there in shock. What I realized was that I am not an outlier. My story is so similar to many other girls. There were times where I felt like I was listening to myself. I was affected by Larry. He did hurt me, and he hurt hundreds of other young women. He took away my innocence, and that is something I will never be able to get back.
Victims reported that Nassar would often use his medical practice as a cover for his actions. Claiming that certain procedures were necessary for their health, he employed various methods to gain their trust, including offering emotional support and establishing a close rapport with both athletes and their families.
I met Larry Nassar when I was somewhere around the age of 5 years old. My parents had become close friends with Larry and his wife Stephanie. They were all medical professionals and shared a passion for the subject. It was during this time, I estimate I was approximately 6 years old, that Larry Nassar began to sexually abuse me. I was 12 years old when I told my parents, when Larry rubs my feet, he uses his penis. My parents confronted him and he denied any such action. Due to complex details that I won't get into here,
The revelations prompted investigations by both USA Gymnastics and the FBI. Many athletes expressed outrage over how their complaints were handled, feeling that their concerns were ignored or minimized by authorities. This widespread failure to protect young athletes raised critical questions about the responsibilities of sports organizations in safeguarding their members. In the media, the Nassar case sparked conversations about abuse in sports, the power dynamics between coaches and athletes, and the importance of believing and supporting survivors. It underscored the need for reform in how institutions respond to allegations of abuse and the necessity of creating safer environments for young athletes.
it already caused me significant anguish, but I hurt worse as I watched my father realize what he had put me through. My father and I did our best to patch up our tattered relationship before he committed suicide in 2016. Larry Nassar wedged himself between myself and my family and used his leverage as my parents' trusted friend to pry us apart until we fractured. Perhaps you have figured it out by now, but little girls don't stay little forever. They grow into strong women that return to destroy your world.
The legal proceedings against Larry Nassar began in 2017, following the culmination of numerous investigations. He faced multiple charges, including sexual assault and possession of child pornography. In November 2017, Nassar was indicted on charges of first-degree criminal sexual conduct.
You sent to keep us healthy and help us get through? The doctor that was our abuser. The doctor that is a child molester. Nobody was even concerned whether or not we were being sexually abused. I was not protected, and neither were my teammates. Larry Nassar is accountable. USA Gymnastics is accountable. The U.S. Olympic Committee is accountable.
I am here to face you, Larry, so you can see I've regained my strength, that I'm no longer a victim, I'm a survivor. Your abuse started 30 years ago, but that's just the first reported incident we know of. If over these many years just one adult listened and had the courage and character to act, this tragedy could have been avoided. For this sport to go on, we need to demand real change, and we need to be willing to fight for it.
The case gained national attention, and in January 2018, Nassar pleaded guilty to 7 counts of sexual assault in exchange for a 40 to 125-year prison sentence. During the sentencing phase, more than 150 victims delivered powerful impact statements, recounting their experiences and the profound emotional and physical toll of Nassar's abuse. These testimonies were a significant moment, showcasing the bravery of survivors and the long-lasting impact of sexual abuse. The emotional weight of these statements drew widespread media coverage and public support for the victims, emphasizing the urgent need for accountability in sports organizations. Many victims expressed their hopes for systemic changes to prevent future abuse.
Because you are guilty, aren't you? Are you guilty, sir?
I said my plea, exactly.
As a month, giving you 175 years, which is 2,100 months. I just signed your death warrant. I need everyone to be quiet. I still have contempt powers. I told you I'm not nice.
Nassar's sentencing was followed by additional legal actions. He faced lawsuits from several victims, as well as investigations into how USA Gymnastics and Michigan State University handled allegations against him. These institutions faced intense scrutiny for their failures to protect athletes, leading to calls for reforms in policies regarding athlete safety and abuse prevention. Ultimately, Nassar was sentenced to a total of 175 years in prison, with the judge emphasizing the lifelong impact of his actions on countless victims.
14 years old, I tore my hamstring in my right leg. This was when he started performing the procedure that we are all now familiar with.
The next visit was for my shoulder, which I then found out my hips were out of alignment, which then made my spine and my pelvic bone out of alignment as well. And this is when Larry decided that it was medically acceptable to violate a 16-year-old girl.
The fallout from the Nassar case has been profound and far-reaching. For survivors, speaking out has been both liberating and painful. Many have described the cathartic experience of sharing their stories in public forums, yet they also face ongoing challenges, including emotional trauma and the struggle for healing.
Protect your athletes. You have to let them know that we care. You have to not let them know, but let them feel it. Let them understand it. Let them breathe it.
The case sparked a broader movement within sports and other institutions to confront sexual abuse and create safer environments for athletes. Survivors have advocated for changes in policies and practices within sports organizations, leading to reforms aimed at preventing future abuse. The implementation of mandatory reporting laws and improved protocols for handling allegations have become focal points for advocacy.
He put my picture up on his wall with the Olympians. I thought I mattered to Larry.
You had me so wrapped around your finger, and I still trusted you so much. Even when I was a sophomore in college, and you were the only person I called to help me make the decision to end my gymnastics career due to my injuries.
The Nassar case also played a significant role in the #MeToo movement, shining a light on the pervasive issue of sexual abuse and harassment in various sectors, not just sports. Public discourse has shifted, with an increased emphasis on believing survivors and holding institutions accountable for their failures.
You know that I can't do that. That's not how our legal system works.
The Larry Nassar case stands as a harrowing reminder of the dangers that can exist in trusted environments, particularly for young athletes. It has prompted crucial discussions about abuse, accountability, and the responsibility of institutions to protect their members. The bravery of the survivors has ignited a movement for change, emphasizing the importance of listening to and believing those who come forward with allegations. As society continues to grapple with these issues, the lessons learned from the Nassar case remain vital in the ongoing fight for justice and safety in sports and beyond.
All right, I guess he decided to clear his conscience or something, but, he told me what he was in prison for, that he had, was accused of raping an 11-year-old girl, and he got 25 to life for it, and, I told him that's enough, I don't want to hear any more.
In November 2014, a chilling case surfaced involving the murder of convicted child molester Theodore Dyer by his cellmate, Stephen Sanderson, at the Saginaw Correctional Facility in Michigan. The gruesome crime took place within the prison walls, raising ethical questions about justice, punishment, and vigilantism. Sanderson openly admitted to killing Dyer, claiming that his actions were morally justified due to Dyer's history of sexual abuse against children. This case captures the imagination of many because it touches on deep societal frustrations and anger towards child molesters, and it ultimately raises difficult questions about the limits of justice and retribution.
Up and all this stuff, and I don't know, I just got mad and then hit him, and then I killed him. When I hit him and knocked him out, and then I took the shoelaces out of his shoes, tied them together, wrapped it around his neck, and strangled him. Then after I was done, I mean, I was aware of what I was doing, you know, and then I just put him on his bed and covered him up. And
Stephen Sanderson, born in 1964, led a life that would eventually take him down a path of crime. Before this notorious murder, Sanderson was serving a life sentence for the 1991 murder of a drug dealer in Wayne County, Michigan. His early life and criminal history shaped the man who would later become involved in one of the most infamous prison killings in the United States.
Just go ahead and tell us what happened.
all right, I guess he decided to clear his conscience or something, but, you know, he told me what he was in prison for, that he had, you know, was accused of raping an 11-year-old girl, and he got 25 to life for it, and, you know, I told him that's enough, I don't want to hear any more. I first, you know, punched him a couple times. Still wouldn't shut up. Still kept telling me he wanted to explain that he didn't do it, that he was being set up and all this stuff, and I don't know, I just got mad and then hit him, and then I killed him. When I hit him and knocked him out, and then I took the shoelaces out of his shoes, tied them together, wrapped it around his neck, and strangled him. Then after I was done, I mean, I was aware of what I was doing, you know, and then I just put him on his bed and covered him up and climbed in my bed and went to sleep.
Sanderson's criminal background reflects a life of hardships, struggles, and violence. After a history of involvement with drugs and petty crimes, he was convicted of murder in 1991. His early years were marked by instability and chaotic circumstances, which no doubt influenced his future violent behaviors. By the time Sanderson was incarcerated in the Saginaw Correctional Facility, he had already spent over 2 decades in the criminal justice system, seemingly resigned to a life behind bars. His actions in 2014 would further define his legacy.
You know, we've been in your cell. That it appears that all of your belongings you
packed up. Yep.
Okay. When did you do that?
Right after I knew he was dead.
Right after you knew.
So.
And the reason for doing that would be?
Because when you go to the hole, that's usually what the police do, to pack it up. And I figured, yeah, they're going to tear my shit up, so let me just do it myself.
So what happened to the shoelaces?
Flushed them down the toilet.
Okay. Now, those laces came out of Ted's shoes.
Theodore Dyer as soon as he learned of his criminal past, reinforcing the idea that this murder was an act of personal retribution rather than a spontaneous fit of anger.
I just, I've been getting these emails saying that, you know, it's not my position to judge anybody. And I want to make it quite clear that I didn't judge him. You know, I know God is the only judge we have. I've just set the appointment up. So I don't feel bad for what I did, you know. I feel bad for maybe the families, his family or something. But as far as remorse towards him, no.
The case of Stephen Sanderson raises several legal and moral questions, particularly concerning vigilantism in prison and the moral justification for extrajudicial killings. Sanderson's murder of Dyer was not carried out in self-defense or in the heat of passion. It was a deliberate, calculated act, meant to serve as his version of justice for the unspeakable crimes committed by Dyer. This opens up a broader discussion about whether individuals have the right to take the law into their own hands, especially in a prison setting. In the years since the murder, Sanderson has remained in prison, where he continues to serve his life sentences. His crime has left a lasting impact on public discussions about justice, child molestation, and the role of retribution in society. For many, the case of Stephen Sanderson is a disturbing reminder of the complexities of punishment and the dangers of letting personal vendettas take the place of legal justice. The case of Stephen Sanderson and his murder of child molester Theodore Dyer is a disturbing example of vigilantism within the prison system. Sanderson, a convicted murderer himself, took it upon himself to act as judge, jury, and executioner in delivering what he believed was justice for Dyer's crimes.
Now, let's talk to the mom. Sal, we're going to call her Sally. She's the mother of the victims. Of course, Sally's not her real name. We're protecting our identity to protect the son's identity as well. Sally, I understand this relationship with Raymond is a little more complicated than the press has been reporting. Tell me about that.
Yes, it is actually.
Raymond was not just a teenager that we just happened to take in. He wasn't a neighbor. He was a full-blown member of the family. My son refers to him as his brother. He's been a part of this family for quite some time, since he was a child.
And so this business of the abuse possibly lasting across 3 years, that seems viable, does it not?
That actually is not true either. What actually happened was Raymond moved away. Right before he moved away, my son just now tells us that something similar had happened before he had moved away. Raymond was gone for 3 years and had just recently come back to Florida.
In 2014, the case of Raymond Frolander shocked the nation, not only because of the horrific nature of the crime, years of child sexual abuse, but also because of the dramatic reaction of the victim's father, who severely beat Frolander after catching him in the act of molesting his 11-year-old son. This case garnered widespread attention for the violence that unfolded after the discovery, raising questions about justice, parental instincts, and the long-term effects of child abuse. Raymond Frolander, a 20-year-old man from Daytona Beach, Florida, was a trusted family friend of his victim. His relationship with the boy's family provided him access to the child, allowing him to exploit that trust and groom the young boy over several years. The abuse began when the boy was just 8 years old, and Frolander would use his position of trust to spend time alone with the child. This scenario is all too common in cases of child sexual abuse, where abusers often manipulate both their victims and the people around them, making it difficult for anyone to suspect wrongdoing.
Of the victim.
I attacked him viciously, and I didn't stop. The only time I paused was to go to the kitchen and retrieve a butcher knife.
On July 18, 2014, the boy's father, who remains unnamed to protect the identity of his son, returned home earlier than anticipated. He walked in on a horrific scene. Frolander was sexually abusing his 11-year-old son. The father, understandably enraged, reacted instantly and violently. He pulled Frolander off his son and then proceeded to attack him physically, beating him unconscious. By the time the father stopped, Frolander was left bloodied, bruised, and lying on the floor. Following the attack, the father made a 911 call that punishment without a trial, acknowledging that the state has enough evidence to convict. Frolander's plea spared the victim from having to testify in court and relive the traumatic abuse.
Cameras away.
He's gonna learn in the next 25 years why I let him live. Now I can't afford to replace y'all's cameras.
In September 2014, Frolander was sentenced to 25 years in prison, followed by lifetime supervision as a registered sex offender. The judge in the case made it clear that Frolander's actions had caused significant harm to the victim and his family, and that the sentence was intended to reflect the gravity of the crime. After serving his 25-year sentence, Frolander will be under strict supervision for the rest of his life, meaning he will be monitored and face limitations on his freedom to ensure that he never has the opportunity to harm another child. While some members of the public and legal experts debated whether the 25-year sentence was harsh enough, it is one of the more severe sentences available for child sexual abuse in Florida. The fact that Frolander will be a registered sex offender for life means that he will never be able to escape the consequences of his actions, even after his release from prison.
Go through a painful trial.
I've learned to go on, and now I just have to reinstill trust in my grandson. He just needs to learn to trust again.
The father's response to catching Frolander in the act was widely supported by the public. Many people praised the father for his actions, arguing that he did what any parent would have done in the same situation. Social media erupted with comments from individuals, expressing admiration for the father's decision to protect his child through physical violence. There were numerous calls for leniency, and many expressed relief that the father had not been charged with assault, as his actions were viewed as justifiable under the circumstances.
The feeling was to kill him, so he will never hurt anybody again.
The Raymond Frolander case is a stark reminder of the prevalence of child sexual abuse and the importance of vigilance in protecting children from predators. While Frolander's abuse of the boy was eventually uncovered, it had gone on for years undetected, highlighting the need for awareness and prevention efforts. The father's response, while praised by many, also underscores the emotional toll that such crimes take on families. The instinct to protect one's child is powerful, but the case also serves as a cautionary tale about the potential consequences of taking justice into one's own hands. While the legal system was able to hold Frolander accountable, the lasting impact on the victim and his family will be felt for years to come.
I desensitized myself to it.
Jeffrey Dahmer, one of the most notorious serial killers in history, committed a series of brutal murders from 1978 to 1991, taking the lives of 17 young men and boys. Dahmer's acts included rape, dismemberment, necrophilia, and cannibalism, earning him the nickname Milwaukee Cannibal. His crimes, fueled by profound psychological disturbances, horrified the public, revealing a chilling capacity for violence and manipulation.
Jeffrey Dahmer's murderous orgy is over.
In 1978, at the age of 18, Dahmer committed his first murder. He picked up 19-year-old hitchhiker Stephen Hicks and invited him to his parents' house for drinks. When Hicks attempted to leave, Dahmer struck him with a dumbbell, killing him. He then dismembered the body, pulverizing the bones and scattering them around the family property. Though Dahmer would not kill again for nearly a decade, this first murder revealed his latent desires for control and his emerging pattern of violent behavior.
I started reading pornography, going to the bookstores. Eventually that led to frequenting the gay bars. And then one time I brought this young man back to the hotel room, the Ambassador Hotel. Was just planning on drugging him and spending the night with him.
After a long gap, Dahmer resumed killing in 1987, following years of struggles with alcohol and isolation. His second victim, Stephen Tuomi, was killed in a hotel room after Dahmer claimed to have blacked out and found Tuomi dead beside him. From this point, his killings became more frequent and brutal. Dahmer primarily targeted young men, many of them vulnerable, marginalized individuals, including LGBTQ+ men and men of color. He lured his victims to his apartment under the guise of taking photographs or offering money for sex. Once inside, Dahmer would drug them, rendering them unconscious before strangling or otherwise killing them.
They should have checked him out. Or arrest. I think it's automatically they should arrest my brother because he was naked on the public.
One of the most shocking and tragic moments in Dahmer's killing spree involved 14-year-old Conorak Synthosamphone, which highlighted the systemic failures that allowed Dahmer to continue killing. In May 1991, Dahmer lured Synthosamphone to his apartment, where he drugged and assaulted him. After leaving the apartment briefly, Dahmer returned to find the boy had escaped. Synthosamphone, naked and disoriented, was found by two women in the street, who immediately called the police. When officers arrived, Dahmer calmly convinced them that the boy was his 19-year-old boyfriend who had simply had too much to drink. The police, dismissing the women's concerns, accepted Dahmer's explanation and returned Synthosamphone to him. Just hours later, Dahmer killed the boy and dismembered his body. This failure to intervene became a significant point of criticism once Dahmer's crimes were revealed, with many accusing the police of negligence due to Synthosamphone's ethnicity and the fact that he was in a perceived same-sex relationship. The officers who responded to the call were later suspended, but eventually reinstated.
Head sir, would you tell us your name and spell your last name for us?
Tracy Edwards, Edwards.
Mr. Edwards, we're going to ask you to speak up very loudly into the microphone. I would like to know in what state do you reside at the present time?
Louisiana.
And how old are you, sir?
32.
32? And you are single?
Yes.
Dahmer's killing spree came to an end on July 22, 1991, when Tracy Edwards, a man Dahmer had lured to his apartment, managed to escape. Edwards had been drugged and partially restrained, but fought off Dahmer and fled into the streets. He flagged down two police officers who accompanied him back to the apartment to retrieve the handcuff key. What they found inside shocked the world. Upon entering Dahmer's apartment, the officers discovered photographs of dismembered bodies, severed heads in the refrigerator, and various human remains, including skulls and bones. The search revealed a nightmarish scene. body parts stored in the freezer, a 57-gallon drum filled with decomposing torsos, and evidence of cannibalism. Dahmer was immediately arrested, and his detailed confessions followed in the weeks after.
Their day in court.
Did you ever stop to think that this is someone's brother, nephew, uncle, cousin, grandson, or just someone's friend?
I hope you can deal with what you've done. I'm trying hard to. You almost destroyed me, but I refuse to let you destroy me. I will carry on.
You destroyed the baby of the family?
Dahmer later explained that he had developed an obsession with control and domination over his victims, and his acts of necrophilia and cannibalism were extensions of this desire. He admitted that his ultimate goal was to create a shrine from the remains of his victims, whom he viewed as objects to be possessed and controlled. The trial was emotionally charged, particularly during the victim impact statements. Families of Dahmer's victims had the opportunity to address the court and speak about the devastating toll his crimes had taken on their lives. One of the most memorable moments came when Rita Isbell, the sister of Errol Lindsay, one of Dahmer's victims, confronted Dahmer in an impassioned outburst. She screamed at him, expressing her grief and rage, calling him Satan and demanding justice for her brother. This raw, emotional confrontation became an iconic moment in the trial, symbolizing the pain Dahmer had inflicted on so many families. Ultimately, Dahmer was found guilty and sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms in prison, ensuring that he would never be released. He was convicted of 15 of the 17 murders he had committed, with the remaining 2 charges not pursued as they fell under different jurisdictions.
The oldest sister of Errol Lindsay, whatever your name is, Satan, I'm mad. This is how you act when you are out of control. I don't want to ever see my mother have to go through this again. Never, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, I hate you, motherfucker. I hate you. This is out of control. Don't fuck with me, Jeffrey. I'll kill you. God damn it. Look at me, motherfucker. I can kill you.
What's your name, Pat?
Rain or shine, sharing your dreams, your heart and your mind.
On November 28, 1994, Dahmer was killed by fellow inmate Christopher Scarver. Dahmer, Scarver, and another inmate were on cleaning duty when Scarver attacked Dahmer with a metal bar from the prison's weight room. Dahmer died from severe head trauma. Scarver later claimed that he had killed Dahmer because of the nature of his crimes and felt that justice had been served. Jeffrey Dahmer's case remains one of the most shocking and gruesome in modern history. His crimes not only revealed the depths of human depravity, but also exposed significant failings in law enforcement and society's treatment of marginalized communities. The fact that Dahmer was able to evade capture for so long, despite numerous opportunities for intervention, highlighted issues of racial and sexual bias, particularly in the handling of his victims, many of whom were people of color or LGBTQ+ individuals.